Hello everybody, this is Gemini Jets 1975 coming at you with another video today. This will be a United Airlines, a brief history and route maps. I have a new special guest with me today. Mike is plane spotting. Please say hello.
Hello.
Alright guys, he will be joining me for the first time today, so let's get started here. My United maps go back to 1982, so I used to have one a little bit older than that, but I didn't like it, so I got rid of it. But anyway, 1982, if you know anything about the history of United Airlines, they were primarily a domestic airline up until, let's say 1986. So in 1982, they flew internationally to Vancouver and then Cozumel, Mexico, and that was it. So they had domestic hubs, large hubs in Seattle, if you could call it a hub, San Francisco, of course, LA for the most part, Denver, Chicago, Cleveland, and then Washington, D.C. was, I wouldn't even call that a hub. But anyway, so this is kind of their early 80s route map. And they were on the verge of very large things by this time. So extensive service in Hawaii, of course. So that has not changed and has been that way for a long time. So that was 82, and then the next one comes 86. This is the time of the Pan Am Pacific route purchase. And of course, United flew, they had a advertising campaign where they were the first airline to fly to all 50 states in the United States. And this was, I believe this is when that happened. San Francisco, of course, Seattle was still going gangbusters, and then of course Los Angeles getting much bigger. Come over here, Denver, Chicago, Washington D.C. was now a hub, and Cleveland was gone. So United basically pulled out of Cleveland, Continental took over, and then of course the merger, and who would have thought that United would have ended up back in Cleveland, and then of course ended up leaving anyway. But anyway, that's another story. So excuse me. So right here, you have extensive Washington Dulles services, of course Chicago, Denver, service to all 50 states. Now for the international map, okay, this was Pan Am's Pacific division, and this looks obviously completely different now. Pan Am, as well as Northwest previously, and now Delta somewhat, relied very heavily on Tokyo as a connecting point. So most everything centered on Tokyo, as you can see right here. United has overflown Tokyo for the most part now. So, and as well as Honolulu. Honolulu used to be a connecting point because most airliners could not fly from Los Angeles, much less San Francisco or Seattle, nonstop down to Australia or anywhere else. So the 747 SP, which was the main aircraft that Pan Am used here, flew from LA to Sydney nonstop, because in the early days of the 747, it was the only 747 that could actually make that trip. So, all right, so we have that, and then now in 1996, things have really changed drastically. United was flying round the world services basically from 1986 until this point. United ended up purchasing Pan Am's Latin American routes once Pan Am went out of business, and then they decided to grow organically, transatlantically. So flying from Chicago and Dulles, they basically started their own Atlantic network. So that was all, done on their own. Whereas the Pacific and Latin America were purchased from another airline. So in 1996, Seattle has been hugely downsized. I wouldn't even call that a focus city anymore. San Francisco, of course, and then Los Angeles actually looks like it's a little bit smaller than it was. Denver, and then you have Chicago, and then Washington Dulles. So Cleveland, long gone. Seattle, long gone. And then you have Miami, which was a holdover from the the Pan Am days. They used that as their primary connecting point to South America. So let's get on to the worldwide map for United. So right here, this is a bit confusing, but so you had the old Pan Am's old South American services out of Miami. So you go Santiago, Lima, Buenos Aires, Rio de Janeiro, and Sao Paulo. And then Washington Dulles, or actually not even Washington Dulles. Washington Dulles was used to fly to Europe, and then New York JFK was used to connect down to South America. And then, of course, New York Tokyo. And speaking of Tokyo, this basically they had already begun to bypass Tokyo. They still had quite a bit of service at this point, but obviously Honolulu had long been bypassed. So you had LA to Auckland, and that was discontinued, and then recently I believe they brought it back. I could be wrong. And then Melbourne. So you have LA to Hong Kong. That was one of the big international flights, and then Osaka and Tokyo, and then of course the majority out of San Francisco. And then the connecting flight to make it around the world was London to Delhi, and then Delhi to Hong Kong. And that's illustrated right there. And anyway, so let's go on to the next one. I do have express maps for 1996 as well. The Continental Express has always been quite extensive, and even back in this time it was. So you have Chicago, as far north as Duluth, Sault Ste. Marie, as far west as Sioux Falls, and as far south as Carbondale, Illinois. And then let's do Denver. So you have as far west as Santa Barbara, as far north as Williston and Minot, North Dakota, Minneapolis, and then as far east as, I believe that's Springfield, Missouri. Would make sense. Wichita, yeah, it should be Springfield, Missouri, and Moline, Peoria, Illinois. All right, and then Washington, D.C. So you go as far north as Burlington, Vermont, and as far south as Charleston, South Carolina, and as far east as Dayton, Ohio. Obviously this has changed, but this is just for illustration. And then of course the West Coast, in Seattle there was still somewhat of a feeder network held over from the hub focus city from the earlier days, and then San Francisco and Los Angeles. Excuse me. All right, now we go to, this is the most current map. This is from shortly after the merger with Continental. Very busy map, as you can tell. Not that the other ones weren't, but this one has less cities but more lines. So you have Portland, Seattle. Here is San Francisco, bigger than ever. Los Angeles, kind of coming back. Denver, Houston now. And then you have Chicago, what was left of Cleveland. I believe there's still a few flights out of Cleveland, but for all intents and purposes, it's not a hub anymore. Washington, D.C., kind of been cut back a little bit. Newark, of course, and then large operations in, well, I wouldn't even call it large, but decent operations in Boston, and then down in Florida. And now for the this is the main international. This is transatlantic and Latin American. Of course, Continental had huge operations in Central and South America, so we have that. The flight from Houston to Lagos, which no longer exists. And then Chicago, Newark, and Washington, D.C. transatlantic services. Crazy busy. Almost puts Delta to shame as far as transatlantic network, but they both have their pros and cons. And then next we have the Trans-Pacific Network. Of course, many services to Tokyo, not as many away from. This is definitely not accurate because there are services into interior China now, and then believe but maybe two of the spokes out of Tokyo have been eliminated. Ho Chi Minh City is no longer served. Melbourne is in Auckland, I think, too, so this is definitely outdated. But at least it gives you an idea. And then, of course, let's see, this is the Caribbean. Got Houston and mainly Newark. And then we also have feeder, keep using old terms here. We have connecting services, United Express, ExpressJet, which was originally Continental Connection, renamed ExpressJet. So you have Chicago, Houston, expanding into Denver, and then it's so crazy and dense in here it's hard to even read it. Washington, D.C. Oh, excuse me. Wow. Washington, D.C., a little bit of Newark, and then there's actually some Cleveland left in here as well. I actually have two of those. And then the other absolutely crazy, insane map is SkyWest. So you have Chicago, mostly Houston, and then some Mexico, and then Denver, and then mostly out west you have Los Angeles, San Francisco, and points north. So most of these cities, I believe, in Canada have mostly been eliminated as of recent. So anyway, guys, that is a somewhat brief video. I don't remember if the Delta one was quite as brief or not, or longer or whatever, but that basically does it for the maps portion. Does my special guest have anything to add to the video before we end?
Guys, please follow me on Instagram and subscribe me on YouTube. I have excellent content.
Yes, definitely. I definitely agree. Please go follow Micah's Plane Spotting on Instagram and subscribe to his YouTube channel. You will not be disappointed. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe as always. Stay tuned for some LAX spotting to be released shortly. And as always, I will see you in the next video.